Hi there, 7th graders. This is American History, Chapter 14, Section 3, War with Mexico. I will be reading and elaborating on pages 457 to 461. So just to remember what we learned in the last section, Texas was a territory of Mexico, but then declared its independence from Mexico. So Texas is an independent country, not a state yet, but an independent country. War with Mexico. We set it up with the guide to reading. Main idea: the U.S. won new western lands in a war with Mexico. We're going to learn how the Mexican War began and why some Americans opposed the war, and how the U.S. obtained New Mexico and California. The United States officially recognized the Republic of Texas as an independent nation in 1837. However, Congress did not immediately annex it because many people in the northern United States opposed entry of another slave state into the Union. Texas continued to exist as an independent country. Peace between Texas and Mexico remained uneasy from the start. Mexico never recognized Texas's independence. The two governments quarreled over borders and territory. Twice in 1842, Mexican troops seized San Antonio. Texans responded by marching to Laredo, a border town on the Rio Grande, and then into Mexico. Tensions increased when Texas passed a resolution claiming land all the way to present-day California. A showdown seemed inevitable. From sea to shining sea. People in the U.S. who favored expansion watched events in Texas intently. Texas had already signed several agreements with Great Britain. If Texas went to war with Mexico, it might form an alliance with the British. With British help, Texas could expand its reach all the way to the Pacific. By the mid-1840s, a group of Americans wanted to see if the U.S. claim that honor for itself. They believed the nation had a manifest destiny. Manifest means clear or obvious. Destiny means something that is sure to happen. Some Americans thought the nation was obviously meant to expand and spread across the continent. They gave little thought to the Native Americans and Mexicans who would lose their lands in the process. Annexation of Texas. After gaining independence from Mexico, Texans immediately voted to seek admission into the United States. Most Southerners strongly supported extending the cotton-growing area by annexing Texas. Northern abolitionists, however, opposed adding another slave state to the Union. Presidents Andrew Jackson and Martin Van Buren had refused to recommend annexation. The issue soon arose again. As the 1844 election approached, territorial expansion took center stage. The Democrats nominated James K. Polk of Tennessee as their presidential candidate. As you read earlier in the chapter, Polk campaigned with the slogan, 54-40 or fight, and made Manifest Destiny the main issue of his campaign. Polk won in a close election. Outgoing President John Tyler considered Polk's victory a mandate for the annexation of Texas. In February of 1845, at Tyler's urging, both houses of Congress passed a joint resolution to annex Texas. In December of 1845, Texas became the 28th state to enter the Union. However, some problems still had to be resolved. The boundary between Texas and Mexico remained undetermined, and the Mexican government threatened war. President Polk responded by sending Agent John Slidell to resolve differences. Polk instructed Slidell to convince Mexico to accept the Rio Grande as the southern border of Texas. He also told Slidell to offer Mexico $25 million for California and $5 million for Mexico. Mexican officials exploded in outrage. They considered such a low sum of money an insult and refused to even speak to Slidell. The brink of war. President Polk wanted to move against Mexico. He knew most Americans backed expansion, but was not sure they would back it to the point of war. Polk decided to press the question by sending troops into Texas. Soldiers under the command of General Zachary Taylor crossed the Nueces River and set up posts just north of the Rio Grande. Although Texas claimed this as the southern boundary, Mexico considered it Mexican territory. Colonel Ethan Allen Hitchcock, one of Taylor's aides, observed, "We have not one particle of right to be here. It looks as if the government sent a small force on purpose to bring on a war, so as to have a pretext for taking California and as much of the country as it chooses." In April of 1846, Mexican soldiers attacked a United States cavalry patrol and killed 11 Americans. Taylor quickly notified Polk. On May 9th, President Polk announced that Mexico has shed American blood on American soil. He then asked Congress for an official declaration of war. On May 13th, both houses of Congress voted by a large majority to declare war on Mexico. Opposition to the war. 14 anti-slavery representatives in the House voted against the war. Ohio Representative Joshua Giddings called the war aggressive, unholy, and unjust. Illinois Representative Abraham Lincoln challenged Polk to name the spot where Mexicans shed American blood on American soil. People outside of Congress also criticized Mr. Polk's war. New England poet John Greenleaf Whittier wrote, "I am heartsick with this miserably wicked Mexican war." Abolitionists considered the war a Southern plot to add more slave states to the Union. They called it a scheme to steal bigger pens to cram in slaves. Most American newspapers, though, rallied behind the president. Major battles. We do have a map here. This is a very good map at the top of the page, 459, that shows the war itself. We have the key battles here. We have the disputed area. Now, Mexico thinks the border between Texas and Mexico is further to the north. Of course, Texas thinks the border, United States thinks the border is further to the south, where the Rio Grande River is. So that's the area that is under dispute here. Major battles. Even before Congress declared war, General Taylor's soldiers fought north of the Rio Grande at Palo Alto and Resaca de la Palma. In May of 1846, Taylor and his army crossed the Rio Grande into Mexico. By September, they captured Monterrey. In late 1846, Santa Anna rallied his forces. He personally led an army against Taylor. In February of 1847, however, Taylor regained the upper hand after defeating Santa Anna at the Battle of Buena Vista. As armies clashed in Mexico, General Winfield Scott landed troops on the Gulf Coast near Veracruz. Scott's army won victory after victory as it marched west. Excuse me. In September of 1847, after Mexicans made a heroic last stand at, this is a tough name, Chapultepec, Scott took over Mexico City. The Bear Flag Republic. Soon after the war began, General Stephen Kearny marched his army to Santa Fe, the capital of present-day New Mexico. The Mexican governor, along with Mexican troops, fled without firing a shot. From Santa Fe, Kearny led about 300 soldiers to California. In 1846, some 500 Americans lived in California. Captain John C. Fremont, an American Army officer and explorer, urged Americans to revolt against their Mexican rulers. In the summer of 1846, rebels hoisted a handmade flag emblazoned with a grizzly bear. With this act, they announced the creation of the independent Bear Flag Republic. When General Kearny arrived, the rebels replaced the bear flag with the stars and stripes. Fremont joined United States forces in fighting the Mexican War. In January of 1847, Mexicans in California surrendered, and the U.S. took possession of the territory. Making peace. On February 2, 1848, the Mexicans signed the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Under its terms, Mexico ceded or gave up all of California, New Mexico. This territory has since become known as the Mexican Cession, meaning Mexico gave it up, they ceded it. It included the present-day states of California, Nevada, Utah, and parts of Arizona, Colorado, Wyoming, and New Mexico. The U.S. agreed to pay $15 million for these lands and agreed to pay the claims of American citizens against Mexico up to $3.25 million. Mexico agreed to recognize Texas as part of the United States. The Mexican government also accepted the Rio Grande as the border between Texas and Mexico. Gadsden Purchase. Americans, however, wanted still more territory claimed by Mexico. Railroad owners envisioned a southern route to the Pacific that ran over a strip of land south of the Gila River. To fulfill this dream, James Gadsden, the minister to Mexico, arranged to buy this land for $10 million. The Gadsden Purchase completed the boundary between Mexico and the United States and the expansion of the United States across the continent. New citizens. The acquisition of the Mexican land brought thousands of American citizens into the United States. The Mexican government worried about the fate of these people. To protect their rights, Mexican negotiators insisted that the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo include provisions allowing Mexicans to freely relocate to Mexico. For Mexicans who remained on their land, the treaty promised them all the rights of citizens of the United States, according to the principles of the Constitution. A difficult choice faced the Mexicans. About 2,000 people headed south into Mexico. A far larger number, however, chose to stay in the United States. Mexicans who remained in the United States contributed to a rich culture that blended Spanish and Native American traditions. When English-speaking settlers moved into the Southwest, they brought their own ideas and culture with them. The settlers, though, learned much from the Mexican Americans. Mexican Americans taught the newcomers how to irrigate the soil and mine minerals. Many settlers, however, did not treat the Mexican Americans and Native Americans fairly. These two groups struggled to protect their cultures and rights against newcomers. Thanks for listening.